Ethan Hayes never believed his life would matter to anyone. He was just a simple human, a mechanic who spent his days repairing broken space engines on the dusty edge of Earth's abandoned trade port. Every morning looked the same: cold coffee, heavy tools, and silence. No one remembered his birthday. No one asked if he was fine. He had dreams once, but those dreams were now buried under metal parts and unpaid bills. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Ethan noticed a faint blue light flickering behind the scrapyard. It was unusual. No ships were scheduled to land, and no beacons should have been active. Curiosity pulled him forward, even though his tired mind whispered, "Ignore it, go home." But something in his heart, something small and lonely, told him to check. He pushed aside old metal sheets and followed the strange glow. Hidden between cargo containers was a door, an arch of silver metal humming softly like a heartbeat. Strange symbols were carved across its frame, glowing with cold blue light. Ethan had never seen technology like this. He hesitated. Should I go back? But before he could decide, the ground trembled slightly and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Bright white light poured out. He stepped through. For a second he thought he was dreaming. Instead of rusty pipes and oil smells, he stood inside an enormous hall made of silver stone and crystal pillars. Floating lanterns drifted in the air like glowing petals. Thousands of alien guests sat in rows, wearing elegant robes that shimmered like liquid stars. Music, soft and strange, echoed around him. Every head slowly turned toward the human who had just walked in. Ethan froze, his heart beat wildly in his chest. Then someone shouted, voice full of relief, "The groom has arrived." Ethan blinked. The what? Before he could speak, two tall alien guards with pale silver skin and armor like glass stepped beside him. They didn't threaten him, but their hands were firm on his shoulders as they guided him forward. His feet stumbled across the shining marble floor. He wanted to scream, "I think you've got the wrong person," but no words came out. At the end of the hall stood a throne covered in white flowers. In front of it stood a young woman, no, not a woman, an alien princess. She was breathtaking. Her skin was pale like moonlight. Her long silver hair flowed down her back, and her eyes were a deep, glowing violet filled with pain and pride. She wore an elegant gown made from stardust silk, and though she stood straight like a queen, her fingers trembled slightly. Princess Liara of the Asterian Empire. Her eyes met Ethan's, and in that one moment he did not see a powerful alien royal. He saw a lonely soul trapped in a golden cage. She whispered just loud enough for him to hear, "This is not the man I was promised." Ethan shakily raised his hands. "Look, there's been a mistake. I don't even know where I am." Cold whispers spread across the hall. "A human? At the royal wedding? Is this a joke?" "He is unworthy." But before anyone could stop it, the High Chancellor stepped forward. He was tall, with silver horns and robes decorated with ancient symbols. With a calm but heavy voice, he announced, "The ceremony must continue. The twin moons will align within the hour. The prophecy demands the princess be wed tonight, or the empire shall fall." Liara's eyes widened with hurt and anger. She looked at Ethan, this confused and frightened human, and asked softly, "Do you want to run away too?" Ethan looked at her, really looked. She didn't need a hero. She just needed someone who wouldn't leave. He swallowed hard and whispered, "No, I'll stay, if you want me to." For the first time that night, her eyes softened, and so, the wedding of a princess and a stranger truly began. Princess Liara stood tall, but inside her heart was trembling like a fragile glass. She had spent her entire life being taught how to smile politely, how to bow with grace, how to hide pain behind royal eyes. But no one had ever taught her how to accept a stranger as a husband, especially not a human, an outsider no one respected. Ethan stood beside her, feeling small beneath the shining crystal roof of the grand hall. Thousands of alien eyes watched them. Some were filled with curiosity, others with anger, and many with silent disgust. He could hear whispers swirling like cold wind. A human groom? Impossible. Princess Liara deserves better. He must be here for power. But none of those words were true. Ethan didn't want power. He didn't even want to be here. His hands trembled as he nervously pulled at the sleeves of the ceremonial robe they had forced him to wear. It felt heavy, like wearing someone else's skin. The High Chancellor lifted a silver staff covered in carvings of stars and moons. His deep voice echoed across the hall. By the ancient law and prophecy of the twin moons, we bind Princess Liara of Asteria and Ethan Hayes of Earth in sacred union. Liara's breath caught slightly at the word union. For a heartbeat, she considered refusing everything, running out the golden doors, breaking every rule. But then she saw Ethan standing with wide, honest eyes. He wasn't proud. He wasn't greedy. He was scared. But he stayed. That made him different from the noble prince who was supposed to marry her, but ran away to save himself. The ceremony began. A floating crown of silver light hovered above Liara's head, then gently settled into her hair. Ethan was given a small crystal band, warm to the touch. When he slipped it onto her hand, his fingers brushed against her skin. For a moment, the world felt painfully silent. Her hand was cold, but she did not pull away. "Do you accept this bond?" the Chancellor asked. Liara's voice was soft but steady. "I do." Ethan hesitated, his heart pounding against his ribs. He looked at her, really looked at her. In her eyes he saw sadness, strength, and a silent plea. "Don't leave me alone like everyone else." Ethan nodded. I do." A soft light wrapped around their hands like a ribbon of stardust. The crowd bowed reluctantly, some with forced respect, others with bitterness. "It is done," the Chancellor declared. "They are bound." That night the palace celebrated with music, fireworks, and dancing lights in the sky. But behind the grand doors, the newly married couple sat in silence on opposite sides of a large moonstone chamber. Ethan stared at the polished floor. He finally spoke, his voice quiet. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to ruin your life." Liara was sitting by the window, watching the twin moons rise slowly into the night sky. Their light reflected in her violet eyes like liquid silver. She didn't look at him when she said, "You didn't ruin it. You just changed it." He looked surprised. "You don't hate me?" She turned her head slightly. "Do you hate me?" Ethan shook his head. "No, I'm just scared." A sad smile touched her lips. "So am I." Silence settled again, but this time it was softer, calmer, like quiet rain. Finally, Liara whispered, "The man I was supposed to marry didn't love me. He wanted the crown, not me. Maybe having a stranger who is honest is better than having a prince who is a liar." Ethan looked at her, and for the first time he didn't feel completely lost. "So what do we do now?" She turned fully to face him, her eyes gentle. "Now, we learn. We try. We don't have to love each other today, but maybe one day we won't feel so alone." Ethan nodded, and for the first time since he walked through that strange door, he felt like staying. The days after the wedding felt strange for both Ethan and Princess Liara. They were married in front of an entire empire, yet they were still strangers sharing the same palace and carrying different kinds of silence in their hearts. The palace itself was like a dream carved from the stars. Tall silver pillars touched crystal ceilings that glowed like morning frost. Floating lanterns lit the hallways at night, and soft music echoed from distant chambers. But to Ethan it often felt cold, like a beautiful cage made of light and loneliness. Every morning Ethan woke up before sunrise. He stood on the balcony of his new room, feeling the cool wind brush against his face. Below him the city of Asteria stretched out like silver waves. Alien ships glided through the sky, and golden mist covered the mountains far away. It was beautiful and terrifying. He didn't belong here. At least that's what he told himself. But Liara was different. She didn't treat him like a mistake or a joke. She treated him like a person. One morning she found him in the royal gardens, sitting beside a quiet fountain. He was holding a small crystal flower in his hands, turning it nervously. "You're awake early," she said softly. Ethan quickly stood up. I didn't mean to be in your place. You're not intruding, she said, sitting on the marble edge of the fountain. This is your home now, too. He hesitated, then sat beside her. The garden was peaceful. Strange purple trees with silver leaves surrounded them, and the air smelled like fresh rain even though the sky was clear. Small glowing fish swam peacefully in the fountain water. For a while, neither of them spoke. But the silence didn't feel heavy anymore. Then Liara spoke, her voice a little sad. The people don't accept you yet. Ethan gave a quiet laugh. I noticed. She turned to face him. They don't hate you because you're human. They hate change. They hate that I chose not to marry the man they wanted. You didn't choose me, Ethan said honestly. I just walked into the wrong door. Liara smiled weakly. Maybe. But you didn't run away. Their eyes met. For the first time, Ethan felt something in his chest, something warm and unfamiliar like hope. Life inside the palace slowly began to change. Liara started teaching Ethan about the Asterian Empire, its language, its customs, its history of stars and wars. In return, Ethan told her about Earth, blue skies, rainstorms, music made by guitars, and hot coffee on lonely mornings. Sometimes she laughed. Sometimes she closed her eyes and imagined it. At night, they often sat near the balcony, watching the twin moons rise together. Their light painted Liara's face in silver. It must be lonely, Ethan said one night, being a princess. Liara looked at the moons quietly. It is. Everyone bows to me, but no one truly sees me. Ethan didn't know what to say, so he just sat with her. Sometimes silence is the kindest answer, but while their hearts slowly grew closer, the world around them was not peaceful. In hidden corners of the palace, nobles whispered, "This human is a danger. He must be sent away. The princess is losing her mind." Ethan heard the whispers when he walked past. Servants bowed, but their eyes were cold. Some guards refused to salute him. One evening, Ethan found the courage to ask, "Do you regret it? Marrying me?" Liara looked at him, and her voice was gentle but firm. "No, I regret many things in my life, but not you." Something changed that night. Their hands brushed as they walked back to the palace, and neither of them pulled away. They were still strangers, but now they were strangers choosing to stay. And sometimes that was the beginning of something stronger than fate. Days turned into weeks, and what began as a mistake slowly started to look like fate. Ethan and Princess Liara were still distant at times, still unsure, but there was no longer cold silence between them. They spoke more, they listened more. They were no longer two lonely souls. Now they were learning to walk side by side. But peace never stays for long in royal halls. One quiet morning, Ethan walked into the council chamber with Liara. It was the first time she allowed him to attend a royal meeting. The large room was filled with nobles in long silver robes, generals in dark armor, and the High Chancellor seated at the far end like a frozen statue. As Ethan entered, the murmurs began. A human? He shouldn't be here. This is an insult to the Empire. Liara raised her chin proudly. He is my husband. He has the right to stand beside me. Some fell silent, but their eyes still glowed with rejection. Without warning, the metallic doors burst open. A messenger stumbled in, blood on his uniform and fear in his trembling voice. He knelt on the cold floor. Your Highness, the Zarkon Empire has sent a declaration. They say your marriage is invalid. They demand you surrender the throne, or prepare for war. The hall fell silent. No one breathed. Ethan felt a cold shiver run down his spine. Liara rose from her seat, her voice controlled but fierce. And if we refuse? The messenger swallowed hard. Then their armies will arrive before the next moon. Gasps filled the hall. General Arik, a tall warrior with dark wings folded behind his back, stepped forward. We cannot fight them. Not now. Our fleets are weak. Our allies are few. Another noble added, then send the human away. Replace him with a royal from Zarkon. Give them what they want. Ethan's heart dropped. He didn't speak, but his hands clenched tightly. Liara turned to the council, her eyes burning. So you would trade my life and my marriage for peace? The noble hesitated. For the survival of the Empire? Yes. Ethan looked at Liara. He expected her to hesitate, to agree for the sake of her people. But she didn't. Instead, she stepped closer to him in front of everyone and said clearly, "No, I will not give him away. I will not abandon him." The council erupted in protest. This is madness. He is not one of us. You're risking war for a human. Liara raised her voice, strong like thunder. He is not just a human. He is my choice. Ethan felt his chest tighten. No one had ever chosen him before. Later that night, Ethan found Liara standing alone on the palace balcony. The wind was cold, blowing her silver hair around her face. The twin moons hung quietly in the sky. You didn't have to defend me, he said softly. Liara didn't turn around. Yes, I did. But they're right. I'm nothing compared to them. I'm not a warrior. I'm not a prince. I'm just... She turned to face him, her eyes gentle but fierce. You're the only one who stayed. You're the only one who looked at me and saw a person, not a crown. Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came out. His throat felt tight with emotion. Liara stepped closer, her voice quieter. I don't know what will happen tomorrow. Maybe there will be war. Maybe we will lose. But if the world is going to burn, I don't want to face it alone. Ethan looked at her, and for the first time since he entered this world, he didn't feel like an outsider. He felt needed. He gently nodded. Then I'll stay, no matter what comes. A small, sad smile touched her lips. Thank you. Far beyond the palace walls, dark ships were already gathering in the sky. The storm was coming. But this time, they would face it together. The sky above Asteria no longer looked peaceful. Dark warships from the Zarkon Empire hovered in the distance like thunderclouds waiting to strike. Everywhere in the city, people whispered in fear. Markets were empty. Children were kept inside. Soldiers trained day and night in the palace grounds. Inside the royal palace, Ethan stood in the war room beside Princess Liara. A large glowing map of the galaxy floated in the center of the room. Red marks showed enemy fleets moving closer every hour. General Arik pointed at the map. We have 3 days before they attack the capital. Liara's voice was calm, but her hands were tightly clenched. Then we prepare. The council members exchanged worried looks. Some still blamed Ethan. Others remained silent, ashamed. Ethan stayed quiet, listening, learning. He didn't know how to command armies. He didn't know how to swing a glowing sword like the Asterian warriors, but he knew machines. He knew engines, and he knew what it felt like to lose everything. Later, in the empty hangar filled with silent starships, Ethan walked alone, running his fingers across cold metal. His heart was heavy with helplessness. What can I even do? I'm just a mechanic. Are you hiding? Liara's voice echoed gently behind him. Ethan turned. She stood in the doorway, dressed not in royal gowns but in an elegant silver armor. She looked strong. and tired. "I'm not hiding," Ethan said. "I just don't want to be useless." Liara walked closer, her steps soft on the metallic floor. "You fixed my music box. You built a water purifier for the servants' quarters. You repaired broken training drones for the soldiers. How is that useless?" Ethan looked at her, surprised. She placed a hand on the cold surface of a starfighter. "You don't need to be a warrior to fight. We fight in our own ways." Something inside him shifted, like a small flame being lit. That night, Ethan worked in the hangar, surrounded by tools and sparks. He opened old machines, rebuilt energy, shields, upgraded weapons, and designed new engines using human creativity mixed with alien technology. Some soldiers came to watch him, first with doubt, then with respect. General Arik entered, crossed his arms, and said, "Your upgrades, they might actually work." Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead. "They will." Arik paused, then nodded once. "Then I'll trust you." For a human, those words meant everything. Meanwhile, Liara trained with her royal guard. She moved like a silver comet, her sword glowing with starlight. Yet when she was alone, her strength cracked. One night she sat under the twin moons, her hands trembling slightly. Ethan found her there. "You're shaking," he said softly. "I'm not afraid of dying," she whispered. "I'm afraid of losing the people I care about." Ethan sat beside her. "You won't lose me." She looked at him, eyes glistening. "Promise?" He gently reached for her hand. "I promise." For a moment, nothing else existed. No war, no fear, just two souls who refused to let go. The next morning, the palace was alive with preparation. Armor shined under the sunrise. Soldiers stood in neat rows. Starships warmed their engines. Liara stood in front of her people, standing tall, strong, and fearless. Ethan stood beside her, not as a prince, not as a warrior, but as someone who chose to stay when everyone else walked away. She turned to him and whispered, "When this is over, take me to see Earth. I want to feel rain. I want to see real stars, not just painted ones." He gave a small smile. "And I want to show you sunsets." Liara held his gaze. "Then let's survive this together." And with that promise, the countdown to war truly began. The first shot of war came at dawn. A streak of red light split across the sky, followed by a thunderous explosion that shook the palace walls. The Zarkon fleet had arrived. Their warships, black as shadows, covered the horizon like a storm of metal. Sirens screamed across the capital. Soldiers rushed to their stations. Families hid in underground shelters. The peace of Visteria shattered in an instant. Ethan stood on the balcony beside Liara, watching the sky burn with fire and falling stars. His chest tightened. "So this is war?" Liara's voice was firm, though her eyes shone with worry. "It has begun. We must go." They hurried to the command center. The war room was chaos. Officers shouting orders, screens flashing red, maps updating with enemy positions. General Arik stood at the center like a tower of iron. "Enemy troops landing at the northern gates," an officer cried. "Deploy Squadron 3. Activate shield barriers," Arik commanded. Ethan stared at the glowing map. His upgraded defenses were working. The shield barriers flickered but held strong against the first waves of attacks. Liara looked at him. "Your work is saving lives," he swallowed hard. "It's not enough." Hours passed like minutes. The sky shook with explosions. Fighters clashed in midair, leaving trails of fire and smoke. The ground trembled with the roar of war machines. Ethan worked nonstop, repairing systems, sending energy to broken shields, guiding pilots through radio communication. Liara fought on the front lines. She rode a silver-winged battle chariot, her sword blazing with white light, cutting through enemy drones. Her soldiers followed her like a rising storm. She looked like a goddess of war, but Ethan saw the tiredness in her movements, the pain in her eyes. As evening fell, disaster struck. An enemy warship broke through the defenses. It fired a massive plasma cannon at the palace. "Impact in 20 seconds, someone shouted. Ethan's blood ran cold. The shield can't handle that. Liara turned to him. We need to divert power from the royal core. General Arik shook his head. That will leave the palace defenseless. Liara looked at Ethan. If we don't, thousands will die. Ethan met her gaze. Do it. Together they rushed to the energy chamber. The core was a giant crystal heart pulsing with blue light. Ethan's fingers flew across the controls, rerouting power to the outer shields. Liara placed her hand over his on the console, steadying him. Boom. The palace shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling. But the shield held, for now. Later that night, Ethan found Liara sitting alone in the darkened hall. Her armor scratched, her face pale. You're hurt, he said softly, kneeling beside her. It's nothing, she whispered, though a cut on her arm bled slowly. Ethan tore a cloth from his sleeve and gently wrapped it around her wound. She stared at him, violet eyes glassy with exhaustion. Why are you doing this? You could have run. You could have saved yourself. Ethan's hands paused. He took a shaky breath. Because someone once told me they didn't want to face the world alone, and I understood. A single tear escaped her eye, shining like a star. Ethan, what if we don't survive this? He reached for her hand. Then let history remember that we didn't run, that we fought for each other. Liara's fingers slowly curled around his. In that quiet, broken moment, they leaned closer, not as strangers, but as two souls who had learned to need each other. Their foreheads touched gently. No words. Just silent promises. Outside, the war raged on, but in that small corner of the palace, hope still breathed. The golden sky of Zelthara was painted with soft shades of pink and silver as the sun began to set behind the crystal towers. The grand celebration had ended, but a peaceful silence filled the palace now. Lanterns floated in the air like slow-moving stars, lighting the path that led to the royal terrace. Aaron and Princess Liara walked together, their steps quiet, but their hearts full of everything they had been through. The universe felt bigger than ever before, yet strangely they no longer felt alone. Liara looked at him, her silver eyes shining softly. Today, you chose to stay, she whispered. Her voice trembled, but her smile was real. You chose me, not because you were forced, not because of duty, but because you wanted to. Aaron felt his chest tighten. He nodded slowly. I did, he said. And if I could go back in time to the moment I first stepped into that hall by accident, I'd still walk forward. I'd still stand beside you. Liara's hand reached for his, small and delicate but warm with trust. She squeezed gently as if making sure he was truly there. I never thought someone from another world would understand my pain, she said. But you didn't just understand, you carried it with me. They stood at the edge of the terrace, watching as thousands of stars awakened in the darkening sky. The two moons of Zelthara rose slowly, casting light across their faces. The wind whispered through silver-leaf trees. Everything felt quiet, sacred. For a long moment neither spoke, but silence no longer felt like distance between them. It felt like peace. Suddenly, footsteps echoed behind them. It was Commander Kale, his sharp armor now replaced with ceremonial robes. He bowed respectfully. Princess Captain Aaron, he said formally, though his eyes were softer than before. The Council has agreed. Earth and Zelthara will form an alliance. Trade, knowledge, and peace between our planets will begin. Aaron blinked in surprise. They accepted? Kale gave a small smile. They did. Because you made them believe. Not with power, but with heart. Liara stepped closer to Aaron, pride in her gaze. This is only the beginning, she said. But it is a beginning we take together. News of their union spread across planets. Some celebrated, some questioned. But no one could deny what they saw with their own eyes. A human and an alien princess, not bound by politics but by choice. That night, a quiet ceremony was held under the twin moons. No crowd, no throne, just them. Liara wore a simple white gown lined with silver threads woven from moonlight silk. Aaron wore his repaired Earth uniform, cleaned and mended by palace tailors. Yet he kept the small tear near his shoulder, a reminder of how it all began. They stood facing each other. No priest, no royal official. Just their words. Leora's voice was soft but clear. I, Leora of the House of Velerin, daughter of stars and storms, choose you, Aaron of Earth, not as a duty but as a promise. Wherever the stars lead us, I will walk beside you. Aaron swallowed, his voice thick with emotion. I don't have royal words, he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. But I have this. I choose you too. Not because I fell into your world by accident, but because I want to stay in it on purpose. Their hands clasped together. No magic lightning. No dramatic music. Just two hearts quietly tying themselves to each other. A soft breeze swirled around them, lifting Leora's veil like a whisper of blessing. In the sky above, a new star appeared. Or maybe it had always been there, waiting for someone to notice. Aaron looked up, then back at her. They were no longer just a soldier and a princess. They were home.